Did you know that Vito Genovese was one of the most powerful mafia bosses in American history, who orchestrated a crime empire that influenced the entire nation? Well, if you didn't know that, we will explore in this video the rise of Vito Genovese, a notorious figure in the mafia world, how he came to dominate organized crime in the United States and the challenges Genovese faced, including rivalries within the mafia and law enforcement efforts to bring him down. Vito Genovese was born on November 27, 1897, in the small village of Risigliano in the province of Naples, Italy. Risigliano, located in the Campania region, was a place steeped in tradition, with its narrow cobblestone streets, rustic homes, and a population that was largely poor and agrarian. The area had a reputation for breeding tough, resilient individuals, shaped by the harsh realities of life in rural southern Italy. This environment would profoundly influence Vito's character and future. The Genovese family, like many others in Risigliano, lived a modest life. Vito's father, Felice Genovese, was a hardworking man who toiled as a farmer. He owned a small plot of land where he grew olives and grapes, producing oil and wine that he sold at the local market. The income from this land was meager, and the family often struggled to make ends meet. Vito's mother, Nunziata, was a devout Catholic who instilled in her children a strong sense of family loyalty and religious faith. Despite their financial difficulties, the Genovese family was respected in their community for their hard work and piety. Vito was the middle child in a family of three sons. His older brother, Michael, and younger brother, Carmine, would both play significant roles in Vito's life. As a child, Vito was known for his quiet but intense demeanor. He was not one to engage in idle chatter or frivolous activities. Instead, he spent much of his time observing the world around him, learning valuable lessons from the people and environment that shaped his early years. The village of Risigliano, like many other parts of southern Italy, was a place where traditional values were deeply entrenched. Family honor, respect for elders, and a strong sense of community were paramount. However, the area was also plagued by poverty, and opportunities for advancement were limited. The lack of economic prospects led many young men to seek their fortunes elsewhere, often through emigration or involvement in criminal activities. Vito's father, Felice, was determined to provide a better life for his family. He worked tirelessly on his farm, but the returns were minimal. The harsh economic conditions in southern Italy at the time, exacerbated by political instability and social unrest, made it nearly impossible for small farmers like Felice to prosper. The burden of supporting the family weighed heavily on him, and he often spoke of the need to find a better future for his children. Vito, despite his youth, was acutely aware of the hardships his family faced. He admired his father's work ethic, but also recognized the limitations of their situation. The young Vito was not content with the idea of spending his life toiling on a small farm with little hope of escape from poverty. He yearned for something more, something that would allow him to rise above the constraints of his humble beginnings. In 1913, when Vito was just 16 years old, the Genovese family made the momentous decision to emigrate to the United States. The decision was not an easy one, as it meant leaving behind their home, extended family, and everything they had ever known. However, the promise of a better life in America, where opportunities seemed boundless, was too tempting to resist. The Genovese family was part of a larger wave of Italian immigrants who sought to escape the grinding poverty and limited opportunities of southern Italy for the potential prosperity of the New World. The journey to America was arduous. The family traveled by ship, a voyage that took several weeks. The conditions on board were cramped and uncomfortable, with hundreds of other immigrants packed in a steerage class. Despite the hardships, the Genovese family remained hopeful, buoyed by the dream of a new beginning in a land of opportunity. Upon their arrival in New York City, the Genovese family settled in the bustling and vibrant neighborhood of Little Italy, located in Lower Manhattan. Little Italy was a microcosm of the Italian immigrant experience, filled with people from all over Italy who had come to America in search of a better life. The neighborhood was a dense, crowded area characterized by narrow streets, tenement buildings, and a strong sense of community. The sights, sounds, and smells of Little Italy were a constant reminder of the homeland, with Italian being spoken everywhere and the aroma of traditional Italian cooking filling the air. For Vito, the move to New York was a culture shock. The city was a world away from the quiet, rural life he had known in Risigliano. The pace of life was faster, the people more diverse, and the opportunities seemed endless. However, the reality of immigrant life in New York was far from easy. The family faced numerous challenges as they tried to adjust to their new surroundings. The language barrier was significant, as none of the Genovese family members spoke English fluently. This made finding work and navigating daily life difficult. Vito's father, Felice, found work as a laborer, taking on whatever jobs he could find to support his family. The work was grueling, often involving long hours and minimal pay. Vito's mother, Nunziata, took on the role of managing the household, ensuring that her children were fed, clothed, and raised according to the values she held dear. Despite their best efforts, the family's financial situation remained precarious, and they lived in a small, cramped apartment in a tenement building. Vito, now a young man, felt the weight of his family's struggles. He knew that he needed to contribute to the household and began looking for work. However, legitimate opportunities were scarce for someone with his background and limited skills. The economic pressures and the harsh realities of life in Little Italy soon led Vito to seek out alternative means of making a living. Vito's introduction to the world of crime came gradually. At first, he took on small jobs for local businesses, doing whatever was necessary to earn a few extra dollars. However, he quickly realized that the legitimate avenues for advancement were limited, especially for someone with his background. The harsh economic conditions, combined with the lack of opportunities for young Italian immigrants, made the allure of the criminal underworld hard to resist. In 1917, at the age of 20, Vito Genovese was arrested for the first time, charged with illegal possession of a firearm. This arrest marked his entry into the world of crime. While the charge was minor, it was a significant moment in Vito's life, as it introduced him to the realities of the criminal justice system and the world of organized crime in New York City. The arrest also brought Vito into contact with members of the Camorra, a Neapolitan criminal organization that had established a presence in New York. The Camorra, originally from Naples, was one of several Italian criminal organizations operating in the city at the time. Unlike the Sicilian Mafia, which was also active in New York, the Camorra was known for its loose, decentralized structure and its focus on local, small-scale criminal activities. Vito quickly found himself drawn into the Camorra's world. The organization provided him with a sense of belonging and an opportunity to make money, something that was in short supply in the legitimate world. Vito's involvement with the Camorra began with small jobs, such as running errands, collecting debts, and acting as a lookout. These tasks, while low-level, gave Vito a taste of the power and respect that came with being part of the criminal underworld. Over time, Vito's role within the Camorra expanded. His quiet, intense demeanor and his willingness to do whatever was necessary to get the job done earned him the respect of his peers. He was not afraid to use violence when required, and he quickly gained a reputation as someone who could be relied upon to handle difficult situations. This reputation helped Vito rise through the ranks of the organization, moving from small-time enforcer to a more prominent role within the Camorra's operations. Vito's association with the Camorra also introduced him to a network of other criminals and gangsters operating in New York City. This network included figures from both the Italian-American and Jewish criminal underworlds, many of whom would play significant roles in Vito's future career. Among these figures was a young gangster named Charles Lucky Luciano, who would become one of Vito's closest allies and most significant influences. By the early 1920s, Vito Genovese had established himself as a rising star in the New York underworld. His association with the Camorra provided him with the connections and experience necessary to navigate the complex and dangerous world of organized crime. However, it was his relationship with Joe, the boss Masuria, that would truly propel Vito into the upper echelons of the criminal hierarchy. Joe Masuria was one of the most powerful mafia bosses in New York during the early 1920s. Born in Sicily, Masuria had come to the United States as a young man and quickly rose to power within the mafia, earning a reputation as a ruthless and cunning leader. By the time Vito Genovese became associated with him, Masuria was at the height of his power, controlling a vast criminal empire that included extortion, gambling, and bootlegging. Vito's association with Masuria began when he was introduced to the mafia boss through his connections with the Camorra. Masuria, always on the lookout for talented and reliable men to add to his organization, quickly recognized Vito's potential. He took the young gangster under his wing, providing him with opportunities to prove his worth and gain the respect of his peers. Under Masuria's mentorship, Vito's rise in the criminal underworld accelerated. He became involved in a variety of illegal activities, including extortion, loan sharking, and bootlegging. The latter was particularly lucrative, as the Prohibition era had created a massive demand for illegal alcohol, and the Mafia was one of the primary suppliers. Vito quickly became one of Masuria's most trusted lieutenants, known for his ability to handle complex and dangerous operations. The early 1930s were a time of turmoil in the New York underworld, marked by the violent conflict known as the Castellammarese War. This war, which pitted rival mafia factions against each other, would have a profound impact on Vito Genovese's career and the future of organized crime in America. The Castellammarese War was a power struggle between two major mafia factions, the group led by Joe Masuria and the faction headed by Salvatore Maranzano, a powerful Sicilian mobster from Castellammare del Golfo. The conflict, which lasted from 1930 to 1931, was characterized by brutal violence, with both sides engaging in assassinations, ambushes, and other forms of gang warfare. Vito Genovese was deeply involved in the conflict, fighting on the side of Joe Masuria. As one of Masuria's top lieutenants, Vito played a key role in the war, participating in numerous attacks and killings. His reputation for violence and his loyalty to Masuria earned him even greater respect within the Mafia, solidifying his position as one of the organization's most formidable enforcers. Despite his best efforts, however, Masuria's faction was eventually defeated. The turning point came when Lucky Luciano, one of Masuria's top men, betrayed him in a bid to end the war and consolidate power. Luciano arranged for Masuria to be killed, a move that effectively ended the conflict and paved the way for Salvatore Maranzano to take control of the New York underworld. The end of the Castellammarese War marked a new beginning for Vito Genovese. With Joe Masuria dead and Salvatore Maranzano in control, Vito found himself in a precarious position. However, his close relationship with Lucky Luciano, who had played a key role in the war's outcome, ensured that he remained a powerful figure in the Mafia. Luciano, who had emerged as one of the most powerful mobsters in New York, recognized Vito's value and loyalty. He made Vito one of his top lieutenants, entrusting him with significant responsibilities within the organization. Together, Luciano and Vito began to reshape the Mafia, moving away from the old-world traditions that had defined the organization for decades, and toward a more modern, business-oriented approach to crime. Vito's partnership with Luciano would prove to be one of the most important relationships of his life. The two men shared a vision for the future of organized crime in America, one that prioritized cooperation, efficiency, and the pursuit of profit over the old feuds and rivalries that had plagued the Mafia for years. This new approach would come to define the American Mafia for decades to come. In the years following the Castellammarese War, Vito Genovese worked tirelessly to establish his power base within the Mafia. He focused on expanding his criminal enterprises, building alliances with other gangsters, and consolidating his influence within the organization. Vito's criminal empire grew rapidly, encompassing a wide range of illegal activities, including narcotics trafficking, extortion, gambling, and labor racketeering. He was known for his shrewd business sense and his ability to forge profitable partnerships with other criminals, both within and outside the Mafia. His influence extended beyond New York, reaching into other major cities across the United States, as well as internationally. One of Vito's most significant achievements during this period was his involvement in the heroin trade. Recognizing the enormous profits to be made from narcotics, Vito became one of the leading figures in the international drug trade, establishing connections with suppliers in Europe and the Middle East. His involvement in the drug trade would become a major source of income for the Mafia and would contribute to his growing power and influence. Despite his growing wealth and power, Vito was careful to maintain a low profile. Unlike some of his contemporaries, he avoided the spotlight, preferring to operate in the shadows. This approach allowed him to avoid the attention of law enforcement and maintain his position as one of the most powerful and feared mobsters in America. While Vito Genovese was building his criminal empire, he was also establishing his personal life. In 1924, he married his first wife, Donata Ragone, with whom he had two children, Michael and Nancy. The marriage was a traditional Italian-American union, characterized by strong family ties and a deep sense of loyalty and duty. However, the relationship was not without its challenges, particularly given Vito's involvement in the criminal underworld. Donata, like many Mafia wives, was aware of her husband's activities but chose to look the other way. She focused on raising their children and maintaining the household, while Vito provided for the family through his criminal enterprises. Despite the strain that Vito's lifestyle placed on their marriage, the couple remained together for several years. In 1932, tragedy struck when Donata died of tuberculosis, leaving Vito a widower with two young children. Her death was a significant blow to Vito, who was deeply affected by the loss. However, he soon remarried, this time to Anna Patillo, the daughter of a prominent Italian-American family. The marriage to Anna, who was known for her beauty and strong personality, would prove to be one of the most significant relationships in Vito's life. Anna played a key role in Vito's life, both personally and professionally. She was a strong-willed and independent woman who was not afraid to stand up to her husband when necessary. However, she also supported Vito in his criminal activities, helping him to manage his affairs and maintain his power within the Mafia. The couple would go on to have two more children, a daughter, Marie, and a son, Philip. Vito's personal life, like his criminal career, was marked by a deep sense of loyalty to family. He was a devoted father who ensured that his children were provided for and protected, even as he continued to build his empire in the underworld. Despite the dangers and challenges of his lifestyle, Vito remained committed to his family, which was always at the center of his life. The end of Prohibition in 1933 marked a turning point for organized crime in America. With the repeal of the 18th Amendment, the Mafia, which had made enormous profits from bootlegging, was forced to adapt to a new economic landscape. For Vito Genovese, this period presented both challenges and opportunities. While the loss of the lucrative alcohol trade was a blow to the Mafia's finances, it also opened up new avenues for criminal enterprises. Vito, always a shrewd and forward-thinking gangster, recognized the potential in these new opportunities and began to diversify his operations. He expanded his involvement in narcotics trafficking, gambling, labor racketeering, and other illegal activities, ensuring that his power and influence continued to grow. Vito's ability to adapt to the changing criminal landscape was a testament to his intelligence and strategic thinking. Unlike some of his contemporaries who struggled to find their footing in the post-Prohibition era, Vito thrived. He established himself as one of the leading figures in the New York Mafia, known for his ability to navigate the complexities of the underworld and maintain his power in the face of changing circumstances. As Vito's criminal empire expanded, so too did his influence within the Mafia. By the mid-1930s, he was one of the most powerful figures in the New York underworld, with connections that extended beyond the city to other major Mafia families across the country. Vito's rise to power was characterized by a combination of strategic alliances, ruthless tactics, and a keen understanding of the criminal landscape. One of Vito's key strategies was to build alliances with other powerful mobsters, both within and outside the New York Mafia. He understood that cooperation was essential to maintaining his power and expanding his influence. To this end, Vito forged partnerships with figures like Frank Costello, Albert Anastasia, and Joe Adonis, all of whom were major players in the American underworld. These alliances allowed Vito to consolidate his power and ensure that his criminal enterprises remained profitable. In addition to building alliances, Vito was also known for his willingness to use violence to achieve his goals. He was not afraid to eliminate rivals or enforce his will through force, earning him a reputation as one of the most feared gangsters in New York. However, Vito was also careful to maintain a low profile, avoiding the attention of law enforcement and ensuring that his activities remained under the radar. Vito's consolidation of power was not limited to the criminal underworld. He also sought to expand his influence into legitimate businesses and politics, recognizing that these spheres were essential to maintaining his power and protecting his interests. Vito used his wealth and connections to gain influence in labor unions, particularly in the construction and trucking industries, which were key to the Mafia's operations. He also developed relationships with politicians and law enforcement officials, ensuring that he had allies in key positions of power. One of the most significant aspects of Vito Genovese's criminal career was his involvement in the international heroin trade. Recognizing the enormous profits to be made from narcotics, Vito became one of the leading figures in the global drug trade, establishing connections with suppliers in Europe, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. His involvement in the heroin trade would have far-reaching consequences for both the Mafia and the world at large. Vito's foray into the heroin trade began in the 1930s, when he recognized the potential of narcotics as a major source of income for the Mafia. At the time, heroin was a relatively new and highly profitable commodity, and Vito was quick to capitalize on its potential. He established connections with international suppliers, including the Corsican underworld in France and the Turkish drug traffickers who controlled the opium trade. Through these connections, Vito was able to secure a steady supply of heroin, which was then smuggled into the United States and distributed through the Mafia's networks. Vito's involvement in the heroin trade was not without its risks. The narcotics business was highly dangerous, with severe penalties for those caught trafficking drugs. However, Vito was willing to take these risks in pursuit of the enormous profits that the heroin trade offered. His involvement in the drug trade allowed him to amass significant wealth, which he used to further expand his criminal empire and consolidate his power within the Mafia. The international heroin trade also had broader implications for the American Mafia. Vito's success in the drug trade demonstrated the potential for organized crime to operate on a global scale, with connections and operations that extended far beyond the borders of the United States. This globalization of organized crime would become a defining feature of the Mafia in the decades to come, with Vito Genovese as one of its key architects. Throughout his rise to power, Vito Genovese maintained a close and complex relationship with Lucky Luciano, the man who had helped him navigate the turbulent waters of the Castellamarese War and who would go on to become one of the most powerful figures in the American Mafia. The relationship between Vito and Luciano was one of mutual respect, cooperation, and at times rivalry, and it would have a great impact on the future of organized crime in America. Luciano, who had emerged as the leader of the New York Mafia following the Castellamarese War, recognized Vito's talents and loyalty. He made Vito one of his top lieutenants, entrusting him with significant responsibilities within the organization. Together, they worked to modernize the Mafia, moving away from the old-world traditions that had defined the organization for decades and toward a more modern, business-oriented approach to crime. Vito's partnership with Luciano was characterized by a shared vision for the future of organized crime. Both men understood the importance of cooperation and efficiency in maintaining the Mafia's power and profitability. They worked together to establish the Commission, a governing body for the American Mafia that brought together the leaders of the major crime families and provided a forum for resolving disputes and coordinating activities. The Commission would become one of the most important institutions in the history of organized crime, and Vito played a key role in its creation and operation. However, the relationship between Vito and Luciano was not without its tensions. As Vito's power and influence grew, so too did his ambitions. He began to see himself as a potential rival to Luciano, and their relationship became increasingly strained. This tension would come to a head in the late 1930s when Luciano was arrested and convicted of running a prostitution ring, a charge that many believe was orchestrated by Vito and his allies to remove Luciano from power. Despite these tensions, Vito and Luciano remained connected throughout their lives, with their relationship serving as a central thread in the history of the American Mafia. Vito's involvement in Luciano's downfall and his subsequent rise to power would have far-reaching consequences for the Mafia and for Vito's own career. In 1936, Lucky Luciano, the man who had helped shape the modern American Mafia and who had been Vito Genovese's close ally and mentor, was arrested and convicted of running a prostitution ring. The trial, which was highly publicized and controversial, marked a turning point in the history of organized crime in America and had a profound impact on Vito's career. The arrest and conviction of Luciano were the result of an extensive investigation led by Thomas E. Dewey, a special prosecutor who was determined to take down the Mafia. Dewey had built his case on the testimony of several prostitutes who claimed that Luciano had been running a vast prostitution racket, an allegation that Luciano denied. Despite his protestations of innocence, Luciano was found guilty and sentenced to 30 to 50 years in prison. Vito's role in Luciano's downfall remains a subject of debate among historians. Some believe that Vito played a key role in orchestrating Luciano's arrest, seeing it as an opportunity to eliminate a rival and consolidate his own power. Others argue that Vito was simply an opportunist who took advantage of Luciano's misfortune to further his own ambitions. Regardless of his role in the case, Vito emerged as one of the primary beneficiaries of Luciano's conviction. With Luciano behind bars, Vito moved quickly to solidify his position within the Mafia. He took over many of Luciano's operations, including his control of the international heroin trade and his influence over the Commission. Vito's rise to power was marked by a combination of strategic maneuvering, ruthless tactics, and a keen understanding of the criminal landscape. By the late 1930s, he was one of the most powerful figures in the American Mafia, with a criminal empire that spanned the globe. The late 1930s and early 1940s saw Vito Genovese at the height of his power, as he established the crime family that would bear his name and become one of the most powerful and influential organizations in the history of organized crime. The establishment of the Genovese crime family marked the culmination of Vito's rise to power and the beginning of a new era for the American Mafia. Vito's ascent to the leadership of the crime family was the result of a combination of factors, including his close relationship with Lucky Luciano, his involvement in the international heroin trade, and his ability to forge strategic alliances with other powerful mobsters. By the time Luciano was convicted in 1936, Vito was already one of the most powerful figures in the New York underworld, with a criminal empire that extended far beyond the city. The establishment of the Genovese crime family was marked by a period of consolidation and expansion. Vito worked to solidify his control over the family's operations, eliminating rivals and expanding his influence into new territories. He also continued to build alliances with other crime families, both in New York and across the country, ensuring that his organization remained at the center of the American Mafia. Under Vito's leadership, the Genovese crime family became one of the most powerful and feared organizations in the history of organized crime. The family's operations spanned a wide range of illegal activities, including narcotics trafficking, extortion, gambling, and labor racketeering. Vito's influence extended beyond the criminal underworld, reaching into legitimate businesses, labor unions, and even politics. The establishment of the Genovese crime family was not without its challenges. Vito faced numerous threats to his power, both from within the mafia and from law enforcement. However, his ability to navigate these challenges, combined with his strategic thinking and ruthless tactics, ensured that the Genovese crime family remained a dominant force in the American underworld. Vito Genovese's criminal empire began to unravel in the late 1930s and early 1940s as law enforcement and rival mobsters began to close in on him. One of the most significant events in this period was Vito's indictment on narcotics charges, which led to his exile to Italy and marked the beginning of his downfall. The narcotics charges against Vito were the result of an extensive investigation by the U.S. government, which had become increasingly concerned about the growing influence of the mafia in the international drug trade. Vito, who had become one of the leading figures in the heroin trade, was a prime target for law enforcement, and in 1937, he was indicted on charges of conspiracy to violate narcotics laws. Facing the prospect of a lengthy prison sentence, Vito fled to Italy, where he hoped to avoid extradition and continue his criminal activities from abroad. His exile to Italy was a significant blow to his power and influence, as he was forced to operate from a distance and rely on his lieutenants to manage his empire in the United States. In Italy, Vito attempted to rebuild his criminal empire, establishing connections with Italian fascist officials and other influential figures. He also became involved in the black market and other illegal activities, using his connections and resources to continue his criminal enterprises. However, his time in Italy was marked by increasing challenges, both from law enforcement and from within the mafia. Vito Genovese's time in Italy coincided with the outbreak of World War II, a period that would have a profound impact on his life and career. During the war, Vito became involved in a complex web of alliances and betrayals as he sought to navigate the shifting political landscape and protect his interests. One of the most significant aspects of Vito's activities during the war was his collaboration with the Allies. Recognizing the potential benefits of cooperating with the American military, Vito offered his services to the U.S. government, providing valuable intelligence and assistance in the Allied invasion of Italy. In return, Vito hoped to secure protection from prosecution and to regain his influence in the United States. Vito's collaboration with the Allies was a calculated move, driven by his desire to protect his criminal empire and ensure his survival. However, it also marked a turning point in his career, as his involvement with the military and intelligence services drew increasing scrutiny from both law enforcement and his rivals within the mafia. After the war, Vito Genovese returned to the United States, where he faced a new set of challenges and threats to his power. His return was marked by a series of legal battles, including a high-profile trial on heroin charges that would have a lasting impact on his career and the Mafia as a whole. The heroin trial, which took place in 1959, was one of the most significant events in Vito's life, as it marked the culmination of years of investigations and legal battles. Vito was accused of being one of the key figures in the international heroin trade, and the trial drew widespread attention from the media and the public. Despite his efforts to avoid prosecution, Vito was found guilty and sentenced to 15 years in prison, a verdict that effectively ended his career as a mafia boss. The trial and conviction of Vito Genovese were significant not only for Vito himself, but also for the American Mafia as a whole. The case highlighted the growing influence of the Mafia in the international drug trade and the increasing efforts by law enforcement to combat organized crime. Vito's downfall marked the beginning of a new era for the Mafia, as law enforcement agencies stepped up their efforts to take down the organization's leaders and dismantle their criminal enterprises. Despite his imprisonment, Vito Genovese remained a powerful and influential figure within the Mafia. Even behind bars, Vito continued to exert control over his criminal empire, using his connections and resources to maintain his influence within the organization. Vito's ability to continue operating from prison was a testament to his strategic thinking and the loyalty of his lieutenants. He was able to maintain control over key operations, including the narcotics trade and labor racketeering, and continued to play a role in the Mafia's decision-making processes. His influence extended beyond the prison walls, as he continued to communicate with his associates and provide guidance on key issues. Vito's life in prison was marked by a series of challenges, including health problems and increasing pressure from law enforcement. However, he remained a formidable figure within the Mafia until his death in 1969. His continued influence, even in the face of imprisonment and declining health, is a testament to his enduring power and legacy within the world of organized crime. Vito's legacy is marked by his role in the modernization of the Mafia, his involvement in the international heroin trade, and his leadership of the Genovese crime family. He was a key figure in the establishment of the Commission and played a central role in the globalization of organized crime. His influence extended far beyond the criminal underworld, reaching into legitimate businesses, labor unions, and politics. Vito's legacy is also marked by his ruthlessness and strategic thinking, qualities that allowed him to rise to the top of the Mafia and maintain his power for decades. His ability to navigate the complex and dangerous world of organized crime, combined with his willingness to take risks and eliminate rivals, ensured his place as one of the most powerful figures in the history of the Mafia. However, Vito's legacy is also one of controversy and debate. His involvement in the heroin trade and his role in the downfall of Lucky Luciano have led to differing opinions among historians and scholars. Some view him as a visionary leader who helped shape the modern Mafia, while others see him as a ruthless and opportunistic criminal who was willing to do whatever it took to achieve his goals. The impact of Genovese's leadership on organized crime was seismic, shaping the very fabric of the underworld. He was a master strategist, always thinking several steps ahead of his opponents, and his ability to adapt to changing circumstances was unmatched. His ruthless efficiency, strategic thinking, and mastery of the dark arts of manipulation and intimidation make him one of the most fascinating and formidable figures in Mafia history. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out our next video.